Eskumar's line of products. This addition guarantees to be mild on the skin, allowing the bar soap to be used as a beauty bar and ideal for hand washing. The liquid soap with added softener leaves your clothes with a bright clean while removing all odor, dirt, and grease. The liquid soap is ideal for your appliances, ensuring great performance. For luxurious laundry detergent, choose a partner.
We plan for every major life event, from birthday parties to baptisms, and celebrating a life well lived deserves the same thoughtful planning. Beacon's Rest Easy plan is designed to give your loved ones the comfort of knowing that they can do just that. With no underwriting and cover for up to 6 family members that includes certain injuries, this plan can be yours for as little as 75 cents per day. Call us at Beacon or log on to beacon.co.tt for more info today.
2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6.
Education multiplies their chances and places the world of opportunity in their hands. No matter where they are in the world, make sure they're prepared for their journey back to school with Western Union. School fees, books, room and board, whatever the reason. Knowledge, independence, opportunity. Western Union, moving money for better.
And this is what we must say. Good morning again to everyone that is locked on a Power 95 right now. Yeah, I know people on the live, it's a little bit earlier than you guys are accustomed to. You may be wondering what is happening, all right? Earlier edition of your ladies' room today. And I have a very special guest with me today. And we're going to dive right into it. So feel free to hit that share button so that your friends, your family, everyone can be a part of this very important discussion this morning. All right, to my people on the frequency, you guys can also feel free to make the switch. We are now live on Facebook, YouTube, and the Twitch platform. All right, so feel free to chime in, guys. It's good to have you guys as always. Good morning to Lino. Good morning to Christelle. Good morning to Miss Alexis. BB. Good morning. Wagwan. Share, guys. You guys don't want to miss this one. All right. So with me this morning, I'm actually going to introduce my guest right now. She is Dr. PURVI PARIKH, MD graduate from the St. George's University in 2008. And she is now an allergist, immunologist, and vaccine researcher at the New York University Langone Health. Now, she is currently working on multiple COVID-19 vaccine trials and was involved with the initial trials of Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Sanofi. Now, she's working on a booster study with Pfizer, given the new variants of COVID-19, and is studying the vaccine in new moms and their babies. All of those studies are looking into the Delta variant, given that it is now the most common strain. All right. So good morning to my guest, Dr. PARIKH. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
It is definitely a pleasure to have you. How are things on your end?
Things are good. They're busy, but they're doing good. You know, things keep changing day to day, so we all have to be ready.
Definitely. So I'm gonna throw you right into the water. I hope you like water just a little bit. All right, but tell us a bit more about the work that you are currently doing in vaccine research. All right, has there been any breakthrough research in the last couple of days or so? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So I've been working on the vaccine since basically the first patient was injected in the trials in May of 2020. So even before the approval and now afterwards, now the main thing we're focusing on are the new variants. Because as you know, the new variants are very contagious. They spread quite quickly, and there might be some evidence that maybe, you know, our vaccines, we want to make sure they hold up well against them. So that's the latest.
Okay. And in terms of the Ministry of Health, I mean, they recently reported to us that 11 samples were sent for testing and 8 were positive for the Delta variant. Now, why does this Delta variant present such a different concern to the other variants?
Yeah, I mean, compared to the original forms of the virus, we know that this variant is much more contagious. So
Mhm.
before, you would only need to be close to someone who had COVID for maybe 15 minutes to catch it. Now you can catch it in 5 minutes. The other
Wow.
concerning thing is that it spreads very quickly. And
Mhm.
even in children, we're seeing affected, whereas earlier on, we didn't see children affected as much. So that's another issue. And the vaccines are still your best shot, no pun intended. They'll still
Mhm.
save your life and keep you out of the hospital. But there is a concern that this variant is able to break through the vaccine for even milder cases. So that's why we're
Really?
constantly updating
Wow.
the research.
So the variant is actually trying to combat the vaccines that we have right now. It
Yeah,
is
I mean,
evolving.
right. So, I mean, the important thing to know is this happens with viruses all the time. They get smart and they look for ways to survive, the same way humans do. So, the
Mhm.
virus will always look for ways to mutate and try to
Mhm.
trick our immune systems. Now, this doesn't mean the vaccines don't work. In fact, now it's even more important to get vaccinated with the more contagious variant. And the sooner
Mhm.
we get vaccinated, then these variants will stop. So we
Right.
want to get everyone protected before there's a variant where our vaccines don't work. Right now, still, even with Delta, the vaccines are
Mhm.
saving lives and keeping people out of the hospital.
Definitely. But what plans are in place? Just diverting a little bit as we on this. I mean, what
Mhm.
sort of contingency measures and so are in place just in case we get to that point where the virus is now beating the current vaccines that we have.
Right. So luckily we're not there yet, but the plans that are in place is we're testing boosters, and we're
Mhm.
testing boosters that are specific to the actual variant itself, as well as
Right.
other boosters that are just an extra dose. And some countries around the world have already started giving this. So that way our immune systems can be ready to fight in case that type of situation arises, which thankfully is not here as of
It's not
yet.
yet. Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I know you said it is still the vaccine is still protecting the fully vaccinated persons, like you rightfully said, because it releases your chances of hospitalization and death as well. But how does this new variant affect the unvaccinated?
Yeah, so in unvaccinated, it's a real problem because it's so contagious. Not
Mm.
only is it more contagious, but it produces 1,000 times the amount of virus in your airways, in your lungs, your nose, your throat than the original forms of the virus. So as you can imagine, if there's 1,000 times more virus in you, you're going to get more sick, right? So currently, majority of the people dying in the U.S. and globally are unvaccinated. And the majority of the people who are in the hospitals and the intensive care unit are also unvaccinated. So it's a
Mhm.
real concern for people who aren't protected.
Definitely. And we are seeing loads of vaccine hesitancy, as we
Right.
would call it. Some people they don't see the point of taking the vaccine simply because even though you're vaccinated, you can still catch COVID-19. You can still carry it. You can still transmit it. So a lot of persons are not seeing the real deal behind the vaccination. But what would you say to those persons?
Yeah, I would say that, we should be far more afraid of the virus than the actual vaccine itself. Because even if you can catch the virus, you will get far less sick. You may get a much milder form. You can recover at home and not have too much detriment to your life. But if you're unvaccinated, you can end up in the hospital, in the ICU, or even dead. You can also make others around you sick because the vaccine is not just to protect you, it's to protect your grandparents, your parents, your children, everybody else as well. So, and people forget this isn't just like a cold or a flu. When you recover from COVID-19, people have long term issues. I know people that 19 months later are still struggling, are not back to normal, are
Wow.
not back to work, not back to school. Because I was in New York when that first wave hit, and a lot of those
Mhm.
people are still suffering.
Mhm.
Some people who were completely healthy before are now living with lung transplants and kidney transplants. So it's not something that's an easy road to recovery. And the vaccine will prevent all those terrible complications as well.
Right. I was actually just going to ask you, what are some of these long-term complications that you have seen after recovery?
Yeah, no, it's scary. I mean, we're seeing brain fog, very trouble concentrating. People can't, even just focus on the television, we're seeing
Wow.
a lot of neurologic problems. So people getting stroke, dementia, people even having like anxiety, depression, who never had any mental health problems before. We've even had a few suicides as a result. And then it affects every organ long term. So people are still having breathing issues over a year later, heart issues, kidney issues, or on dialysis. So it's not any walk in the park by any means. And these people's lives are changed. We don't know for how long. Hopefully not forever.
And there are loads of persons, they have these underlying conditions and so on, which sort of prevents them, well, mentally, I guess, because they're so scared. So they say, what if
Right.
I take the vaccine? It sort of makes my conditions worse or so. And I want to take the vaccine, but I'm still concerned about that. What would you say to these individuals?
Yeah, so I would say those individuals, you actually need it the most, because of your underlying condition. So especially if you're someone with heart disease, diabetes, obesity, you need it most. If you're someone whose immune system is compromised in any way by, cancer or autoimmune diseases or any of those reasons, asthma, COPD, lung problems, you actually need it more than someone who doesn't have these problems. So don't let
Right.
your medical problems scare you from not taking the vaccine. They should actually scare you to take the vaccine.
Definitely. Now, here in Grenada, I mean, community spread was confirmed just around mid-August, right? And
Right.
Grenada is now experiencing its first wave. What do you think the next couple weeks, just looking ahead a little bit, what do you think the next couple weeks would look like here in Grenada?
Yeah, it's concerning because I'm seeing reports now of increasing people entering the hospital, increasing deaths. And to my knowledge, only about 20% of the Grenadian population is fully vaccinated. So that
Right.
means the majority are still unprotected. So it's almost like a race against time. We need to get more people vaccinated because the problem is you don't want to happen what happened to us here in New York early on, where your health system gets completely overwhelmed, meaning the hospital has to turn people away, right? Because there's not enough room. There's not enough resources. And then even more people will die, not just from the virus, but because there's not enough resources to take care of them. So,
Right.
if that can happen in a city like New York, where we have so many hospitals, imagine what can happen in Grenada. So, I really warn people, like, take this seriously.
And what do you think can happen if we get to that point, where the health system is just so overwhelmed and the resources cannot take care of everybody? What do you think happens at that point?
I mean, at that point, unfortunately, the healthcare workers have to make a lot of tough choices. We're already seeing it in some parts of the U.S. too. I heard a man died, I believe somewhere in the southern U.S., because he got turned away from 43 hospitals because everywhere he went, each hospital was full. And just to give you perspective, we don't turn people away easily from hospitals. It
Mhm.
has to be very bad because we find space, right? You'll see stretchers in hallways and every single corner of a hospital we utilize. We don't like to turn people away. Even parking lots, we'll pitch a tent and treat people in the parking lot if we can. So the fact that, hospitals can't take on anymore, that means that the situation is very bad. And that's what I'm afraid may happen in somewhere like Grenada, where if those resources are completely exhausted, then unfortunately people won't be able to get medical care. And don't
Right.
forget, other medical problems don't stop in a pandemic, right? So if a hospital is full of COVID patients and then God forbid someone has another medical emergency like a heart attack or stroke or something, then they can't get the help they need too. And we saw that happen here as well. So people don't realize the downstream consequences.
Right. So, like someone coming into the hospital, I mean, with COVID-19 as opposed to someone with another issue, the COVID-19 affected person, do you think that they may get the preference?
It's hard to say. It depends who's sicker, basically. That's
Mhm.
how a lot of these decisions are made, especially when you have limited resources. It's like, okay, who is the sickest person? Some
Mhm.
places in the world, like Italy, they actually had to make very tough choices early on in the pandemic. I don't know if you remember, but they had to
Mhm.
make choices based on age, and that's heartbreaking. What you shouldn't have to, decide who gets a ventilator based on how old they are or, how sick they are. The whole idea is we want to be able to give everybody these resources.
Mhm. And in terms of the healthcare workers, because I mean they have been on the front line for a very long time, and it is
Right.
heartbreaking. I mean, I couldn't be a health official for anything, having to actually look at someone gasping for breath, fighting for their life and stuff like that. It must be really difficult for them. And I mean, now, especially that they're so overwhelmed, what would you say to these frontline workers? I mean, how can they perhaps deal with the stress, the anxiety, all of the tough choices and so on? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's difficult for sure. First and foremost, I would say thank you, for putting yourself out there. And this is the first time that always it's stressful to be in healthcare, but it's additional stress because healthcare workers are putting their own lives at risk too. Many can get sick themselves and also pass it on to their family members. So first and foremost, I would say thank you. And then I would say, please make time to take care of yourself because we are seeing even here very high levels of burnout, among doctors,
Right.
among nurses, just because, this high amount of stress is very difficult to sustain for such a long period of time. And as you said, it's hard for anybody, not just you, to deal with somebody who's suffering and death and dying on a daily basis. It really does take a toll on one's mental health, one's physical health. So I would tell healthcare workers, try your best to, take care of yourself. It's like what they tell you in the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first before assisting others. Because
Mhm.
if we lose our healthcare workers, then we're really in trouble. Who's going to take care of everyone?
Definitely, definitely. And in terms of that Delta variant that we have been hearing so much about, are symptoms actually different from the other variants of COVID-19? I mean, what should we look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for the most part, a lot of the symptoms are similar, but this variant is a little tricky. So, in some people, it's actually more subtle and it presents almost like allergies. So, a lot of times we can be fooled and thinking I'm not sick, because, oh, this is just a little stuffy nose or sore throat I get from my allergies. Meanwhile, the person is infected and passing it on.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke with a patient a couple of weeks ago. She was surprised she tested positive because she was like, I just thought this was my regular allergies. I didn't feel sick.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any symptom, I would encourage people to get tested actually, because outside from the classic stuff like fever, loss of smell, taste, body aches, diarrhea, vomiting, there's subtle symptoms too, which can be tricky, unfortunately.
Yeah, because right here in Grenada, I mean, a lot of people are still in two minds about getting tested and so when they see symptoms, because actually what usually happens is that after the carnival season, there's
Hmm.
usually a really bad cold that goes around.
Right,
So
right.
they get these flu-like symptoms and they say, that's probably just the regular, and they sort of take that for granted. So you are saying to these people, get tested as soon as possible.
Right. This isn't your normal year, and especially with such a contagious Delta variant, which we know already has arrived in Grenada and is spreading throughout Grenada. Yeah, I would not just assume it's just a cold, please get tested because you could be spreading it to somebody else, especially somebody that you care about.
Right, definitely. And just to touch on parents and protecting younger children who cannot get vaccinated. I mean, what sort
Mhm.
of symptoms do you look for in terms of what is your next step as a parent? And how can you protect your child who cannot get vaccinated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the best way to protect your child who can't get vaccinated or anyone else who cannot for medical condition is to get vaccinated yourself.
Hmm.
This is something where you're affecting other people as much as you are your own health. And because this Delta variant does infect children more so, 1 in 5 cases, at least here in the US, are all pediatric. And unfortunately, we are seeing kids getting very sick and ending up in the hospital. So the best thing you can do is get everyone in the household who is eligible vaccinated. Make sure your child masks, when they go to school and distances themselves, because these small things can go a long way from protecting them.
Right. And I mean, what sort of symptoms and so do you look for though in your child?
So yeah, in children, it can be again very similar. They can have stuffy nose, runny nose, no smell or taste. Again, the fevers. And I know with
Mhm.
kids, it's tricky because kids get sick a lot anyway at school. They're always passing around germs. So
Mhm.
especially now, I would take these symptoms seriously and keep them home from school and get them tested if they are coming down with these symptoms. But they can also get upset stomach, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, feeling fatigued. So a lot of the same symptoms as the adults as well.
Now, I've heard a term recently, right? I mean, I was paying attention to the news and so, and I heard a term recently, long COVID.
Right.
What exactly is long COVID and how does it affect persons who contract COVID-19?
Right. So long COVID is something that you do not want because I have been seeing many patients with long COVID. Basically, what it is this syndrome that months after the infection is gone, people are still suffering with various symptoms. So I know earlier we spoke about this, that even 6 months, 1 year later, we're seeing people who are unable to go back to work, unable to go back to school because their brain is foggy, they can't concentrate, they're having breathing problems, heart problems, they can't walk, they have weakness and overwhelming fatigue, and the frustrating thing about this is we don't have a good treatment for it. So a lot of people, they've been to every doctor to try to figure out what's wrong with them, and many tests are negative. And what we think is happening is, even though the virus is no longer infectious, that there might be some protein of the virus that stays in your body and is causing constant inflammation, or it may be almost like an autoimmune disease that develops even after the infection is gone. Your body stays inflamed, and that's why you continue to suffer. And all those mental issues also come along with it. So we've been seeing a lot of anxiety, depression, even suicidality in these individuals that never were completely healthy, fine before, never had any issues. So it is quite scary, and a lot of research, including some work I'm doing with one of my own St. George's classmates, is going into studying these individuals and seeing why that they're still having these problems a year later, 15 months later, and what can we do to make it better. So that's another reason I would get vaccinated, is because I've seen how much these people are suffering. We don't know how long they're going to suffer for. Is this going to last for years? Nobody knows. But at least the vaccine will prevent that from happening if you don't get sick. And in some of these long COVID patients, actually, the vaccine has shown to get rid of their symptoms, which is really interesting. And we still are trying to figure out why that's the case. So people who got sick before the vaccine existed. So it's really interesting.
And how exactly, I've heard you said, some persons, they suffer from depression and anxiety and so on. How is that exactly linked to having COVID-19?
Yeah, this is a crazy virus. I mean, nobody has seen a virus like this before, whether they've just started practicing medicine or they've been in the career 40 years. And what this virus does is it actually affects your brain and your neurological system very severely. So a lot of people, they say 1 in 3 people who have COVID and survive have some type of neurological problem. So that's a very big percentage. It's a third of people. So it can, cause clots in your brain and give you stroke. It can cause even early dementia and Alzheimer's. And we're seeing that it's even causing a lot of these psychiatric illnesses. And it's another mystery as to why this virus causes so many of these issues. So we've seen depression, anxiety, even psychosis in people who've recovered from COVID-19. And these were people who had 0 mental health problems before, 0 neurological problems before. That's a scary thing. So we're finding that it actually, in the virus, affects almost every organ system, even long after the infection is gone, that inflammation. It's because our immune systems have never dealt with anything like this before. So it completely overwhelms our immune systems. And that's why this vaccine exists, to prevent a lot of these issues.
To sort of prevent that stress on the immune system and the body.
Right.
Now, there seems to be very limited information circulating on vaccination in pregnant women. Could you just dive a little bit into that first, just to kind of clarify some things?
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, now, luckily, there's a lot more information compared to when the vaccine was first approved for emergency use. Actually, we now have a lot of data on like tens of thousands of pregnant women who've received the vaccine. And we found that it's actually very safe, and pregnancy is actually a high risk condition. If they get sick from COVID-19, we've seen awful things happen. In fact, currently, in one hospital in Mississippi, 8 pregnant women died, and they were all unvaccinated. So now we are heavily encouraging women who are pregnant to get vaccinated because it protects not only the mom and the baby. And we found that in vaccinated moms versus unvaccinated moms, there's no risk to the baby or to the mom. So there's no risk of preterm labor or any birth abnormalities or any complications to the mom. But if you don't get vaccinated and you actually get COVID-19, there's huge risk to both the mom and the baby. And we're seeing that now, sadly, especially with the Delta variant. So we are urging all pregnant women to get vaccinated because we know it's very safe, and we've seen what happens to unvaccinated pregnant moms. Another benefit of the vaccine is your baby actually is born with immunity if you get the vaccine while you're pregnant. So it's kind of like you're protecting 2 people with one shot. So,
at once.
yeah, so it's great. The moms are capable of amazing things. They're actually even able to pass on their immune system to their baby, which we already knew from before this, but now we have confirmation that it occurs with COVID as well. So your baby will be protected too when they're born.
Right. And I actually saw a situation just yesterday. I mean, someone, they were applying for a job and so on. They just made a baby. However, the organization said, well, in order to get the job, you need to be vaccinated. So now she's wondering whether, I mean, she's breastfeeding and all of that. So she's wondering if it's safe to take the vaccine while breastfeeding. So what would you say to women like that?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Now we also have a lot of data that it is safe in lactating moms, and the same benefit applies. So all babies in their first 6 months of life rely on mom's breast milk to get all of their immune systems, because at that age, their immune systems are growing. They're too young to get a lot of vaccines. So you will not only be protecting yourself, but your baby as well. And so I would strongly urge that, that mom gets vaccinated. And actually, that's one of the things that we're continuing to study in one of the studies I'm involved with called the Mommyvax Trial. So we're following these ladies who got the vaccine when they're pregnant, when they deliver, and they're following their children to make sure that it's absolutely safe. But I would definitely encourage her to get it. That's what I've been telling my own friends and family members.
Okay, perfect. And of course, guys, we have to say thank you so much to Western Union, Escuma Variety Store, and Beacon Insurance for making this a very important discussion possible this morning. Now, Doc, I know we're running out of time, but I just want to ask this before we go. Now, we know that, COVID-19, it has flu-like symptoms, but how is it actually different from the common cold and flu?
Yeah, so it's a completely different virus altogether. So the common flu is caused by a virus called influenza, right? Which we know it does change a little bit year to year, but for the most part, thanks to flu shots and the fact that it's been around for so long, all of our immune systems have kind of developed that herd immunity. So if we get sick with the flu vaccine is still important every year, but we have some backup reserve. The common cold, believe it or not, is in the same family as COVID, the coronaviruses, but because it's the common cold and has been around for so long, again, it's not that dangerous for you and I because our immune systems have been dealing with this for decades or even centuries. The problem with COVID or SARS-CoV-2, it's a brand new coronavirus that none of our immune systems have ever dealt with before. And because of that, it's very, very dangerous. So even if it doesn't kill you, the havoc it wreaks on your body, you're nowhere near normal when you come out of this thing, and you have so many long-term problems. So that's why the vaccine is so important, especially for this specific virus.
And you mentioned herd immunity. Now, we have been hearing the term. What exactly is herd immunity? And what does that mean for a country?
Yeah, so herd immunity is when enough people have immunity in a population, and that has to be a very high number. So it could be even as high as 80% or more.
So it has to
have
be over
immunity. 50. Oh yeah, much over 50. It has to even be closer to, I would say, 80%,
Okay.
And so enough people have it that no longer the virus is being passed on from person to person. And therefore, everybody is kind of protected because we're all immune. And the other beauty of herd immunity is that you're less likely to get these new dangerous variants like the Delta variant, because if a virus can't replicate and pass from person to person. It can't mutate, so that's the other benefit of herd immunity. And the important thing to know that there's not a single infectious disease that's reached herd immunity since the history of time without a vaccine. So a lot of people tell me, well, why can't we just let the infection play out and we reach herd immunity naturally? It doesn't work that way because it would take a very, very, very long time and we would lose a lot of lives that way. So polio, measles, all of those things we no longer hear about have reached herd immunity because of vaccination. So that's why you hear that term a lot in the same sentence as a vaccine.
Okay, understand. And I mean, now in Grenada, 2,000 plus cases, the death over 30. What would you say to Grenadians right now? What are some of the preventative measures and so that we can take here as a nation? Because we already established that the Delta sorts of spreads 10 times faster than the regular COVID-19. So what can we do as a country to keep safe as best as possible?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do, get your vaccine as soon as possible. If you haven't, become fully vaccinated. Keep masking. They do work, especially indoors. I know it's very hot in Grenada, so outside, luckily, the spread is not a big a deal. But indoors, we know the virus spreads very quickly. Keep washing your hands, keep distancing. All of these things are still very, very important. And please, take care of one another. The best way to take care for your community is to do these things because you're not only protecting yourself, but everybody else as well.
Right. And in terms of you and your team, Doc, I mean, what can we look forward to in terms of combating this pandemic, getting out of it? What are you and your team working on right now to sort of combat this virus?
Right. So we're looking at the booster shots so that way we can, outsmart the virus, stay one step ahead. We're also looking at, the vaccine in pregnant moms, breastfeeding moms, their progeny, their children. So that way we know for sure the safety, the efficacy, and make sure everybody's well protected. And there's other new vaccines also coming down the pipeline. So, we hear a lot about the mRNA vaccines and the adenovirus vector vaccines, but there's other ones still coming down the pipeline, which may be very helpful. So Sanofi, Novavax, these are all coming, and it's great to have options because there might be one vaccine that may work for one person better than the other. So there's a lot of good things coming down the pipelines, but we researchers need your help as well because you need to buy us time, right, to get these answers. So the best way to buy us time is to get everyone vaccinated and immune so we slow down these variants from coming.
Definitely. And I mean, something that is sort of confusing a lot of persons right now because we're hearing talks of it, mixing vaccines.
Right.
Is that healthy? Is that advised? Is there perhaps certain vaccines that can be mixed with another one? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're going to have that answer very soon. Already in the UK, they've done a study mixing vaccines. So 1 dose AstraZeneca, 1 dose Pfizer, and it's showing that, it's safe. It has a good response. There's some theories that it may even have a better response. We don't have concrete proof of that yet. So I'm not telling you to go out and mix them. But because sometimes when you keep your immune system on its toes, it can produce a stronger response. So if you get one type of vaccine, then your immune system doesn't kind of get used to it, for the second shot. So there's a lot coming down the pipeline, but so far we will have guidance on that soon because all those studies are underway for mixing and matching the vaccines. And that might be something we're all doing in the future. But yeah, so far one study does show that it's safe and effective. So, at this point, I would say get whatever vaccine you can get. They're all very effective against death and hospitalization, which is the two worst outcomes, I would say, of this virus.
And you mentioned the immune system, how important it is to build your immune system during this fight against COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the immune system, that's our main line of defense. That's all that we have. Everyone asks me about immune boosters, right? Because I'm an immunologist, and the single most effective immune booster is the vaccine. It's the only thing in medicine that works that quickly because other ways to boost your immune system are going to take time, the healthy diet, getting enough sleep, making sure you're taking your vitamins, all of that takes a long time, losing weight. That doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. But the single fastest thing is that shot. You get it in 2 weeks, you're immune. So that way
Mhm.
you're boosted. But yeah, all of those healthy lifestyle habits are still important, because we found that obese people did far worse, with COVID-19. People with diabetes and other medical problems like high blood pressure also do worse. So you still need to take care of yourself, of course.
Mhm. All right. Thank you so much, Doc. It was some good food for thought today. I know everyone enjoyed it, and we definitely have to continue this discussion. We definitely have to come back and sort of dive a little deeper into things. But just before we go, I mean, any final thoughts now that we are in the middle of this? It is our first wave. It's nothing like the country has ever experienced. I mean, any final thoughts to persons infected, persons that perhaps are still a little vaccine hesitant? What can you say to Grenadians right now?
Yeah, having been on the island when Hurricane Ivan hit and seeing that death and destruction, it broke my heart, right? So Grenada holds a very special place in my heart. This has the potential to be far, far worse than that. And the last thing that I would want to see is anything bad happen to Grenada or Grenadians. So you have my word, don't be hesitant about the vaccine. I never preach something that I'm not doing myself. I've had it. All of my family members have had it. Much of what's out there is misinformation. It does not cause infertility. It's safe in pregnant women. It's safe, even in children 12 and up. So please go out and get your vaccine. If you're sick, get tested, get the medical help you need right away, and then still do those small things. They go a long way, like the masking, the hand washing.
Right,
And
right.
please take care of yourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Doc, thank you. Thank you. Thank you a million. All right. And do stay safe yourself. And we do look
Thank
forward
you.
to reaching out to you again and getting some more info. All right. And we do wish to thank Western Union, Beacon Insurance, and of course, Escuma Variety Store for making your ladies' room possible today. To everyone on the live, we say thank you so much. Doc, cheers again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. This was your ladies' room for today, guys. Much more coming your way right here on Power 95.